Jim's here.
We pooped. So
That's been the problem.
Verizon time is now 4 p.m. So I'd like to call this Adams Board of Health meeting to order here on April 14th, 2021. Welcome to all of you. And I start by reading the waiver and notice of recording. You did hear the voiceover. This meeting is being recorded. Pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12, 2020 orders suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 18, and the Governor's March 15, 2020 order imposing strict limitations on the number of people that may gather in one place. This meeting of the Town of Adams Board of Health is being conducted via remote participation. No in-person attendance of the members of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings as provided for in the order. And I will note that on the agenda, I did put my cell phone number in case anyone is having trouble joining. Attending remotely is member Laura Grandchamp, Dr. Peter Hoyt, and myself, Dr. David Rhodes, are attending from Town Hall. We have posted today's agenda, which includes the call-in information for today's meeting. Despite our best efforts, we are unable to provide for real-time access for the public to participate in today's meeting. A recording of this meeting will be made available. As we are participating remotely, all votes will be taken by roll call. And so finally, we will need to confirm the names and addresses. I have Michelle, you have everyone. Yes. Anyone you need more information from here. DJ is from MMA. Jim Willis is from Tri-Town Health. Tobacco Awareness Program. Catherine Foster is a citizen. Of course, Jack Marino is at Berkshire's. I would, given that we have plenty on our agenda, including these two public hearings, I would like a motion to move the two public hearings, starting with the flavored hemp wrap topic to be first. I would like those two to be moved up to next on the agenda. Do I have a motion?
Motion to amend the agenda.
Second. Any discussion?
No.
Thank you. Pete, what say you?
Yes.
Laura?
Yes.
And Dave also says yes. Passes unanimously. So the first hearing is regarding flavored hemp wraps or flavored tobacco and enhancement products, which seem to be new on the market and spreading around. And because of our desire to minimize underage smoking, removing flavoring possibilities from tobacco products is a mission, both of ours as well as DPH and our governor. So I would like to open a public hearing so we can entertain this a revision to our tobacco laws. Do I have a motion to open the public hearing?
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? Pete, what say you?
Yes.
Laura?
Yes.
Dave says yes, so unanimously passed. We are now in public hearing, and I believe we do have some speakers, DJ Wilson from MMA and Jim Willis from Tri-Town Health. Officer Blaisdell, will you be wishing to say some words?
If necessary.
Okay, good, thank you. So we have our 3 board members and 3 speakers. Let me ask DJ first, because he has the overall perspective on this issue.
Hi. Hello, everybody. The chair sent out an email on April 12th with a couple questions, so I can answer those. And that is to our expanded model flavor policy that we recommend for regulations. In it, we say, as his email states, no person shall possess. And then in the definition of person, we had no individual. And then it went on to retailer, agents of retailers, things like that. And so we did recognize that, and this came up in another city, that to say individual would mean that no one, that even someone just living in town can't have this on them. So we did change that one word individual to retailer. So it makes it clear that in the retail world, that's who we are referencing in this policy. A second question had to do with in the state regulation, which is 105 CMR, and this particular part was 665.010. There's a requirement that if you're selling vape products, you must, as a retailer, have in your possession a manufacturer's letter that states that that you can sell the following products. So this would be true for adult-only retail tobacco stores and for general retailers, that they can't sell anything that has a nicotine strength over 35. Oh, I take that back. Just general retailers. Adult-only retailers can have this. So it states that that their product can't be over 35 milligrams per milliliter in nicotine strength. And then in the 2 paragraphs down in that state regulation, it says, and something similar, that every retailer that sells tobacco products must have a manufacturer's letter on file that indicates that that manufacturer is listing out those products that they sell that are not flavored. And so that is required for both adult-only retail tobacco stores and retailers. Smoking bars, which I don't think you don't have one, but a Department of Revenue approved smoking bar, which is a cigar bar or a hookah bar, are exempt from this. But those other 2 categories would need, both would need a manufacturer's letter on flavors, and one would need a manufacturer's letter on nicotine strength. So I think what we did is we added to the flavor definition.
Yeah, if I could just interrupt for a second. Yes, I misunderstood, and Jim sent me the 105 CMR 665 that I was working off of was outdated, so I did not realize that they changed these.
It's fine.
The one that does indeed say you need the manufacturer's letter, not only for the nicotine strength, but also for the lack of flavoring.
Correct. And so both of those are in the state regulation. So if it's included in a local regulation, it's great, because it gives another reason for a retailer to know about it, because they're supposed to be reading your local regulation. But if it's missing from your regulation, it's still in effect through the state regulation. And frankly, their distributors should all be aware of this and should be giving them these manufacturers letters now. So they should have been doing that months ago, actually. So I think those are the two biggest questions off of this. If you had other questions, I'm happy to. And then there's another question about that same policy saying no person shall possess, hold, keep, sell, or distribute. We added those verbs, possess, hold, keep, and then a little later, possessed, held, kept, to this policy because we were finding that retailers who weren't supposed to have any flavored product for sale were actually keeping it on their premises and selling it to customers they know. So we found in the back room, Jim's probably found some of these things too. Back room, under the counter, we have one store that had them in a wooden barrel in paper bags, and the customers knew that that's where the menthol was being kept. And so, so what we did is say that if you in your retail establishment, you can't have these there. So then there's no reason to sell them. We did have some retail establishments say, oh, but we mail order these to out-of-state customers, which A, would be unlikely because we're the only ones, in the whole Atlantic seaboard that has a flavor policy. And number two, we have high cigarette taxes, high tobacco taxes, and we just instituted a vape tax statewide too. So it's no financial deal to get it from Massachusetts, but if you're a retailer that wants this mail order to happen, you can have it happen, but not at that location that they are permitted to sell at retail.
Okay, understood. That makes sense. Do you have anything to add to that, Jim?
No, I think it's pretty accurate. One of the things we're struggling with, because the state regulation was passed and then COVID hit. And so we're really trying hard to make multiple educational rounds. One of the things that we're seeing kind of scatter throughout the entire collaborative is that a lot of these stores don't have this manufacturer's letter certifying that the products that they're selling are not flavored. So we're trying to work through our retailers to educate them on that. But make no mistake, any product being sold, with the exception of a smoking bar, has to have these manufacturer's letters. That takes the guessing game out of these new generation of flavors, because prior to the state regulation, we couldn't figure out what was a flavor, what wasn't. The new state law makes education for enforcement a lot easier. And I think what you're also trying to do is try to add to that flavor enhancer with the rolling papers and the flavored hemp wrap. How that came up a couple months ago is as we were getting our way back out there to do our educational inspections, as we're winding down with COVID, hopefully, is we started seeing these flavored hemp wraps kind of scattered throughout the county. And I initially thought that was covered under the state regulation, so I had reached out to DJ and he clarified that unless it's very clear locally about rolling papers and flavored hemp wraps, we couldn't enforce it. And so as part of my monthly collaborative updates, I did send something out a couple months ago that flavored hemp wraps and flavored rolling papers were allowed unless you had a local policy. And I think that's where Adams kind of is now. You're trying to get a handle on that. And DJ, I'm pretty accurate in that statement, right?
Yeah, in fact, very few cities of town had anything in place for rolling papers, and certainly nobody for hemp wraps. But the change to the state law in 2018 now allows cities and towns to do that.
So I think I believe, not sure who added these words, but so meeting the definition of flavored tobacco product or tobacco product flavor enhancers. For the purpose of this regulation, enhancers includes but is not limited to flavored rolling papers, flavored hemp wraps, flavored tinctures or infusions for flavoring, rolling papers, hemp wraps, etc. I know I said the list is not exhaustive, but is there anything else you would recommend adding to that?
For me, I think you hit it well. One of the things that we've been very concerned about is just that now that rolling papers can be regulated at the local level, that in reality, what we care more about than just the regular easy wider from the 70s and 80s are the flavored versions, because what we've learned, why the feds have acted on flavored tobacco products minus menthol, why the state has acted, and why we have 100 cities and towns that have their own flavor policy in place, is that we've learned that that's what kids like. And so focusing on the flavored versions is very important.
Great, thank you. Laura, Pete, any further questions, comments?
No, my big concern was making sure that the legislation was aimed at retailers as opposed to the individuals, which I think has been addressed. So.
And, okay, so I believe at this point, I could ask to have a motion to adopt this paragraph into our regulations. Our 2020 tobacco sales regulations. Have a motion to adopt this paragraph.
Is there anybody else that wants to speak, or I don't know if Mark wanted to say anything?
I think Mark's question was also addressed. It was basically Laura's question. The breadth of and
Okay.
so is that a motion?
Yeah, so move.
Second,
Second.
any further discussion? I'll take a vote. Pete,
Yes?
Laura,
Yes.
David, also yes, so it is unanimous. I think the remaining is what the effective date on this should be. Attorney St. John likes to say 30 days is good. Should we should publish this in the Eagle, is that right, Jim?
What I would do is I would, put that new approved language into your regulations and just do a summary notice. And if you need a sample, let me know. And, one thing as you close out this process, do you plan on shooting an email or like a letter to your retailers, just letting them know so they're not surprised that this may be coming? Because we can't always assume that they're paying attention to what boards of health are doing.
That's
That's a great idea.
great idea. So we'll make sure that everybody knows. And so today's the 14th. So I'm thinking 30 days from now would be May 14th. So the effective date on this will be May 14th. May I have a motion to make this regulation effective on May 14th?
So move.
Second.
And any further discussion on that? DJ has a question.
And just to remember to change the word individual to retailer in the person definition. I don't know if that's just a clerical issue or you want that part of your vote.
Right. I will actually email you to make sure I got it right, because I want to make sure. Thank you. And so Pete, what say you?
Yes.
Laura?
Yes.
And Dave also yes, unanimous. Regulation will be effective on the 14th of May. And then I believe the only thing DJ sort of posited that this would be paragraph H. So I think we will need some relettering on our regulations. So there will be a notation on our overall sales regulation that renumbering or relettering paragraphs occurred because of this. I don't think we need a motion for that, but just want to make sure we got everything straight. So at this point, I will say thank you, DJ. Thank you, Jim. And I'm glad that's sailed through, and great. So you take care, have a great evening, and I'll catch you with the next thing that comes down the road.
Very good.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Thank you.
Thanks.
I'll need a motion to close the public hearing on that.
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? Okay, Pete,
Yes.
Laura,
Yes.
and Dave says yes, so all three, this is unanimous vote. This public hearing is now closed. We now move on to our second public hearing. This has to do with 64 Summer Street, a landlord tenant issue. And so I believe that Officer Blaisdell has provided us all with the background information. So I would like to open public hearing on 64 Summer Street appeal of correction order. Mark?
Okay, so on March 23rd,
Wait,
Lieutenant Michael Rizzo had reported to me that the landlord, Chrisanne Rufo, had been intermittently shutting off the breaker box to their apartment. Mr. Rizzo mentioned that his wife had the medical condition for...
Can you hear me?
I can.
We need to open the public hearing by vote and then, yeah, okay, sorry, I may be mumbled here. The masks don't help. So do I have a motion to open the public meeting on 64 Summer Street appeal?
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? Pete,
Yes.
Laura,
Yes.
and Dave, yes, it's unanimous. This public hearing is now open. We have with us Kristen Rufo. Kristan is the owner of 64 Summer Street. We have Mr. Rizzo, a tenant at that same address. And we have our code enforcement officer, Mark Blaisdell. And I would ask Mark Blaisdell to provide us background, which he already did, but basically summarize the findings and what he would like.
Okay, so on March 23rd, the tenant, Michael Rizzo, reported that his landlord, Chrisanne Rufo, had intermittently been shutting off the breaker box to their apartment. Mr. Rizzo had mentioned that his wife has a medical condition for which there's a treatment device that requires the use of electricity. So I performed the on-premises inspection on the 24th of March, and it was also brought to my attention that the back door did not properly latch and lock as required by the code, and it was also not weather tight. I also noticed that there were two areas of the ceiling where the paint was peeling, and those are the matters pertinent to the correction order that was issued, for which Ms. Rufo is appealing. So at this point, I'll let Ms. Rufo explain the basis for her.
Ms. Rufo, can you hear us?
You're breaking up a little bit, but yes.
Excuse me 1 minute. Michelle, could you close that door, please? Because we are also getting interference from the next room. You said I'm breaking up?
It's better now. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
No.
And so you would like the order to be lifted or what?
Yes, please. I purchased this building in September and gave a notice to quit. So this person does not have tenancy. There's been notice of, eviction notice has been issued. Court is scheduled for April 29th. And it is not feasible for me to afford to bring this living space up to code for him when it is my intent and has been since purchasing it to occupy it myself. I can't afford to rent out this place as an apartment. I have no intention to ever do so.
And Mark, did you have something?
Yes. So Mr. Rizzo and his wife were actually occupants of this apartment when Ms. Rufo purchased this mixed-use building, which also has a storefront and 2 other apartments. The purpose of the housing code is to protect the health, safety, and well-being of the occupants of housing and of the general public. Its purpose is to also facilitate the use of legal remedies available to the occupants of substandard housing and to provide a method of notifying interested parties of the violations of conditions which require immediate attention. An occupant's tenancy status is not relevant to this case. Ms. Rufo may have been ill-advised as far as 105 CMR 410's applicability, venue, and authority. The housing code applies even while evictions are pending. Ms. Rufo's comment that the correction order would become moot once she assumes occupancy of the apartment because the code requires that even an owner-occupied space meets the requirements of the code, so those corrections would still have to be made.
Definitely changing all the locks and painting all of the place.
So, anyway, her basis for asking the board to either rescind or revoke or withdraw the correction order does not coincide with the code. She would have to show that the inspector did something that he should not have done, or he didn't do something that he should have done. So I asked the board to consider the order should be affirmed or sustained based on the parameters of the code.
And
Can't make corrections to this building. I'm tapped out. I've been waiting for 7 months, taking the legal route to evict this delinquent occupant. He has no tenancy. Just because he came with the building doesn't mean that I have an apartment for rent for him. I can't afford that.
That's not the jurisdiction of this board or of my authority. The code does, well, let me back up. There are programs that could assist you with making the repairs, and you would have to make application for those programs through the town's community development office. The code does allow for these repairs to be made by other measures. One is by the tenant invoking what's called a repair and deduct. Another is by the board to arrange for the repairs, and then we invoice those costs to the property owner. If payment is not made, then we attach those costs to the property deed. Another option is for the tenant or for the board to pursue a court-authorized receivership of the property, and that's where the court will appoint a third party to collect rent, make repairs, and pay bills. So there are statutory options for bringing this property into compliance.
He has no agreement with me for tenancy, so no rent.
Again, that's not the jurisdiction of this board.
Right
I'm
there.
saying I have no option other than to pay for it myself. So this man can destroy my property and mandate that I pay for it while he steals from me.
May I hear from Mr. Rizzo?
Yes, hello, this is Michael Rizzo.
Okay. What is your response here? You would be calling.
My response, I had called Mr. Blaisdell on, I believe, the day he had stated, because our electric breaker box was being shut off maliciously. My wife's on an albuterol machine, which requires her to be on an electronic medical machine every 2 hours. I went down and spoke to Miss Rufo, and her statement was, well, did you pay your electric? Nobody's destroying her property, and nobody's stealing from her. She is not accepting rent due to her lawyer telling her not to accept rent, because then it would state that she is accepting tenancy. Where I do have a paper signed by her dated 10/31 where she is asking for rent, okay, signed by Miss Rufo in front of me and Mr. Blaisdell. The other thing is when Mr. Blaisdell had come, because we only did call him on the fact that she was shutting our electrical box off, which we do not have access to. It is in the basement. We are on the second floor, the first floor where the commercial storefronts are. She has a massage parlor and a thrift shop, one left, one right. Then two tenants downstairs, one left, one right, in basement apartments. We asked for a key. She denied that. That's all we originally asked for. When Mr. Blaisdell had arrived, that's when he had noticed peeling paint, the door that was not being sealed, the lack of a screen door, which we weren't even aware of that we needed to have one. All we wanted was her not to be able to shut our breaker box off, because my wife could die. She's disabled. She's on SSI. She's on SSA. And that's why we're here, because of of her maliciously shutting off our breaker box.
I have no reason to ever shut off a breaker box, maliciously or not. I have better things to do with my time.
I have a witness that was there that day.
Okay,
and it was shut off 4 times in an hour.
May I interrupt at this point, because I think we have heard enough that we understand what the issues are. Mr. Rizzo did note that he has a letter which was not provided to us. And so it makes it a little bit more difficult for me to pass judgment on Ms. Rufo and her non-tenancy argument, because that letter would seem to be relevant to these proceedings.
That was prior to a notice to quit and eviction notice.
But
So-
it's still
We have
admitting
no
that we are tenants.
You're not a tenant.
According to you in this letter, we are.
So if I may,
And
I
you never
apologize,
paid.
everybody. My name is Steve Abelli from Berkshire County Regional Housing Authority Tenancy Preservation Program. And we were referred to from the Housing Court to actually assist on this matter. So I just wanted to inform the board that the court is actually scheduled for trial for April 29th at 9 a.m., where both Ms. Rufo and Mr. Rizzo, which I'm also working with, and his wife will be able to present the case. And then the judge only then would make a determination on whether there is established tenancy or not. There was a lease signed previously a year ago by the previous owner of the building, and there hasn't been one. So I just wanted to inform the board that, and I'm sorry if I interrupted. I apologize.
Thank you. That is very important information.
Thank you, Steve.
And so if
I cannot afford to rent this space as an apartment.
You're the one deciding not to accept rent.
Because I cannot afford to accept rent and put a roof over my head somewhere else.
So you'd rather not take any money.
So wait, let's back up a bit, because like I said, I think an important piece of information is the letter which Mr. Rizzo says he has. And as Steve noted, the case is pending. Unfortunately, it's 2 days beyond when Officer Blaisdell is set for reinspection. I'm wondering if there is a way we could just, and after the 29th, after the hearing on the 29th, that it's still possible that Ms. Rufo could not evict Mr. Rizzo. So it may remain independent. So this is an unknown to me.
So if I could interject, Dr. Rhodes?
Yes, please.
So Attorney St. John is still on the Zoom. My position is that the status of the tenancy is irrelevant to the correction order. Could I ask Attorney St. John to comment?
I want to review it before I comment on it.
Okay, then another option would be to continue this until the next board meeting in May.
I would be happy to do that, although I would like to see, number one, the letter from Mr. Rizzo. And number two, it would seem to me simple, and not that expensive to fix the door and provide Mr. Rizzo a key just in case the electric goes out, that he has access. Those are two simple things, not that expensive, that could be done between now and the 27th.
The 27th being the date of reinspection.
Right.
And the court is scheduled for the 29th.
I'm just trying to get the two main issues, access to the breaker box and the insecure door addressed within short time.
If I may interrupt for one moment, the main thing is the breaker box, for us to have access in case that breaker goes off, that I can go down and switch the breaker. It's in the basement. It's a locked door. We don't have a key for it.
Right. So this is what I'm saying is that that's they're two simple things. One that can be done right away, and
Correct.
cost, and then a second one that should not be that expensive, that should be taken care of anyway.
Yeah, I mean, I'll pay for it. It's $350 for a key.
So in essence, if you were to take a vote, you would vote to modify the correction order to a date sooner than 27th for Ms. Rufo to repair the rear door and to provide a key to the basement so that the Rizzos have access to the breaker box, and then her remaining matter, being the ceiling paint, can be reevaluated for a later date?
So that's what, I think the key is the key.
Yeah. I don't, can I interrupt here, David? I think that the breaker box is the main issue for me. Whether the electricity is being turned off intentionally or not, that's not the issue. The issue is that the tenant doesn't have access to it. So I think, if we're gonna make a correction, that key access should be done by the end of the week, because that's a big safety issue in my mind.
Yes, thank you.
Because, that could be opted by somebody turning on the hairdryer, and then it could be several days before that can get turned back on if they don't have access to it. So to me, that's the biggest issue here. I think the door thing can wait until the 27th as the original order. But getting a key made, they could do that tonight probably, in reality tomorrow, and have that done by Friday, I would think.
So I would ask that we modify the order to have Mr. Rizzo provided with a key to the breaker box by Friday. That's the 16th of April. That the door be repaired by this inspection, the 27th.
Right, it's to the point, I don't mean to interrupt, but to the point where last week with 40-mile-per-hour winds, the door was being blown open. I have to put my dryer in front of it, which puts me in violation.
Let me finish with and that the remaining issue be visited again when we reconvene the board on May 12th.
May I ask a question about this hearing?
Catherine Foster.
Yeah.
Can I ask Ms.
Shut her up. Mute her.
Can I ask?
Was that a yes?
No, you
Can I ask
may not, you are not allowed to speak in this, so please.
Isn't this a public hearing?
Rufo.
I can't shut her off.
Ms. Rufo, where the breaker box is there anything else in that area that of value or anything that why this Mr. Rizzo can't have access to that?
Well, the lock is the same lock for the basement apartment on either side. There are two separate.
No, they both have their own separate doors.
Yes, but the outdoor lock is the same, so I'll have to change the lock on the outside and give them a separate key.
Okay.
But then in the basement is their laundry and storage of their personal items and my personal items and the breaker boxes, the electrical, gas, the hot water heaters, and the water main.
Okay, thank you. So all that would be, I think, should be important to have somebody to access.
Not his hot water heater or heater.
Yes, my hot water heater is down in the basement.
You have a separate heater.
Heater, not hot water heater.
I thought it was a separate dedicated
No,
hot
Ms.
water
Rufo, you should really look at your building.
So
heater. I really wish I could, but someone's occupying it.
All right.
You've
right
been in
now-
the basement. You're the one who shut my electric off.
I did not, and I have no
Mr.
business
Rizzo, Ms.
engaging with you.
It is our turn. And so there is a motion on the floor. No, I asked for a motion to have keys provided to Mr. Rizzo by Friday, that the door be repaired by the 27th reinspection, and that we would revisit the entire order at our next meeting on May 12. May I have a motion for that?
So we needed time on the 16th,
Noon.
noon? 12 noon?
12 noon.
So moved.
Second,
And if I may just inform the board though, based on what would happen on the 29th, I will make sure to inform Officer Bladesdale or whatever the decision will be. So if there's no reason for this board to reconvene on this particular issue, we could just move forward with it.
That would be appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? Pete,
Yes.
Laura,
yes,
Dave says yes, so it passes unanimously. And I would strongly encourage that Mr. Rizzo, please do contact Officer Blaisdell when you receive the key, and at that time it would be appropriate to provide him with the
Yes, absolutely,
of which you spoke, so that we have that in hand.
absolutely.
Okay, thank you. I think we are done here, so I would ask for a moment. Thank you both. Thank you, Steve. They have a motion to end this public hearing.
So moved.
Second,
second,
any further discussion?
no,
Let's vote to close the hearing on 64 Summer Street. Pete,
Yes.
Laura,
yes,
and Dave says yes, so we are unanimously closing this public hearing. Thank you all. So we are now back into open meeting, and I will go to the next agenda item. It looks to me like approval of the minutes from March 10. So you did get the minutes yesterday, Laura, correct?
Yes, I got that.
yes, I did get them.
Okay, good, because, yeah. When you asked me, I said, wait a minute, and I couldn't find them, and Pam was, madly typing them up. So do either of you have changes?
I have just a couple typo things. So on the second page, the second full paragraph, the second paragraph is Building Commissioner Garner stated that the board, that the last sentence, he informed. It says informed, it should be informed.
And I picked up in that sentence, license is also misspelled.
Yep, that was my next one.
Yeah.
And then the last page, no. What page is this now? Page 3.
Yeah.
Talking about scrap metal, it's not scrap metal.
Yeah.
Where are you?
Bottom of page 3, so it says it a couple times.
Yeah.
The third paragraph from the bottom.
Yeah.
And that
Oh, yeah.
term is the scrap metal. It says it a couple times in there. Fourth one up too, I think is where it first starts. And that's all I had. Just a couple typos.
And Laura, did you see anything?
Respiratory is also under respiratory secretions. I think it's page 3. Or
Oh,
maybe as a typo as well.
oh, goodness. And in that same paragraph, they misspelled veterinarian. You didn't put.
Oh, I don't. Yeah, there's an R missing. Yeah.
What paragraph are you in?
This is under new business. It's the second paragraph starting with number Grandchamp. Veterinarian is misspelled as well as respiratory. Two paragraphs up just before new business, Chairman Roach discussed the judgment by Attorney General's office. So judgment is misspelled, does not have that first E in it. And maybe Mark could answer this, going back to the scrap metal paragraph. He stated that when he performs inspections of vacant properties, he would also inform the banks responsible for this property of this situation. I wasn't quite understanding what that sentence meant. I think you were basically referring to that vacant properties, whoever is controlling it should make sure that scrap metal is not left around for the taking kind of thing.
Is Mark still here?
Yes,
I am.
here you are.
I think he's trying to find the sentence. I believe that was your sentence.
So the Pittsfield ordinance that I was referring to applies to scrap yards and not necessarily scrap haulers, but so in essence, similar to what we have in our bylaw that our waste haulers can't bring their waste to their property. They have to go from collection to facility disposal.
Okay, so
yeah, so also they can't operate this ordinance in Pittsfield. They couldn't operate anything similar to a scrapyard. For example, if someone was picking up refrigerators, taking them to their house, and then disassembling them there for the various scrap metals, that would be classified as a scrap yard, and they couldn't do that without the proper licensing. So you could have scenarios where people are stripping various metals, separating them out, and again, that's operating as a scrap yard. So that was my reference.
okay, so that so when you perform inspections, you also, so it's probably the vacant property that it's not so much the vacant property but that properties are not being used as scrap yards.
Vacant properties are also illegally dumped upon. So when you do inspections of that nature, you're identifying the various refuse, trash, rubbish, debris, and waste. You have sometimes abandoned vehicles, which are no longer vehicles, they're just piles of scrap metal. So, yeah, I think she was trying to paraphrase that, but.
Okay, so that whoever controls the property, in many cases banks, that they monitor that the vacant property is not used as a dumping ground.
Right.
Okay. Thank you. yes, that refreshes my memory completely. Thank you. And then last thing I had was that the header is still the agenda instead of the minutes header. So I think that was it. Wow. With those amendments, may I have a motion to accept these minutes as amended?
So moved.
Second,
Discussion, please note. Pete,
Yes.
Laura,
yes.
and Dave says yes. Those minutes passed, approved unanimously. Thank you. Moving on to the next item, which is public comment. Does anyone from the public want to comment? Ms. Foster, did you want to comment? It seemed like you did before. Well, apparently not. So having not heard from anyone, I now close the floor to public comments, and we can move on. Officer Blaisdell, do you have anything specific to say at this point that is not on the agenda?
I do not, sir.
Thank you very much. Old business. I did submit the annual report from fiscal year 2020. I want to thank RP, Officer Blaisdell, and Building Commissioner Garner for doing their bit, including Crystal Wojcik from the accounting office, who actually helped me clean up the budget, so I now understand everything. In that context, I will note, because Commissioner Garner was quite upset at the bills we were getting from Berkshire B&A for TV, and it turns out I looked through those. I communicated with the B&A as well as our public health nurse, Nancy Slattery, and clarified the total charges for tuberculosis monitoring, which is state mandated, cost us a little over $4,000 in fiscal year 2020, and another $2,000 plus fiscal year 2021. So they will hit us. I think we're still in 2021 for another month or so. I did ask the BNA, and they basically do not cover TV monitoring. It's extra. It's just, and we have never, this is the first case we've had for ages, but it was somewhat moderated by the fact that the state has adopted a WebEx monitoring system, which DPH picks up the cost for that. And so, and I did the calculation on the $6,000 plus. It comes out to about 75 hours of nursing time, 6 months of monitoring. That comes down to 3 hours a week. So with travel and so on, that $6,000 is legitimate. I just wanted to state that that's what it costs. And so I will leave that at that. Any other questions or comments on the annual report and that budget component? We were on the side, we were not charged for any of Nancy's time and COVID follow-up, which is there was a lot of overtime, and the BNA actually ate that and ended up getting reimbursed through CARES money. COVID update. It is alarming. Adams is in the red. I discussed the issues with Chair Hoyt and Town Administrator Green and here at Board of Selectmen meeting last week to give an update. One always hopes that this was a blip, but it appears to keep on cases appearing. We had 5 new cases in Adams today, so it is totally alarming. The notion is that at least hearing from what the state is reporting and so forth, they're not just doing estimates for the variants. So the B117 first identified in the UK seems to be is becoming more prevalent, about 30%. They estimate about 30% of the cases. It's more prevalent in the east, but it does seem to be moving out here to the west. The P.1 probably represents about 3%. That's the one that was first identified in Brazil. And then the South African variant B1351 is small, in just a few cases, but that basically brings me on to the issue with the new variants. We do know the vaccines are effective and safe, except for J&J. We can speak about that a little bit later. But when you say 95%, that means that there is a few percent possibility of contracting COVID even after you've been vaccinated. And if you can, you may pass it on. Now, the likelihood is low, but it's not zero. And this is something I really want to stress. Wear the mask, keep wearing the mask. That is important. Until we have no virus spread, the virus can and will spread. So please wear your masks. The other, stay in your pods. Hand sanitizing, avoid travel if you can, and if you do travel, redouble your precautions, and by all means, get vaccinated as soon as you can, because the more people we have vaccinated, the slower the virus is going to spread. The pause in the J&J vaccine rollout is, of course, disturbing to everyone. It is because the J&J was a fairly small percentage of the vaccine available. It had a slight impact. But on the other hand, the pause was fully justified because some very rare clotting syndrome was found in 1 out of 1 million in the over 6 million doses administered. There were 6 cases of this clotting syndrome, 1 death. And so the CDC, in conjunction with the FDA, they put it on pause until they could study. It could just be that women of childbearing age are more susceptible. So it could be that that's the warning going forward. But the CDC wants to make absolutely sure that they know what's happened before but putting it into perspective, catching COVID is a 1% chance you will die. 1 out of 100 versus the J&J, that's 1 out of 6 million that you will die. So in terms of risk benefit, to those who have already received the J&J, I would just like to assure you that you're safer with it than you were without. And further,
So I know that, I think last meeting we voted on the state's home program, and they were mainly going to utilize the J&J. Has there been any word on,
yes.
has that been up and running, and how is this affecting that now?
And I'm remiss because I should have asked, we had a meeting today, with Board of Health Association, and it's, I know that that's put a crimp in that.
Yep.
Because they were targeting J&J because it's a single dose for the mobile vaccine rollout. And so I think DPH is working on how they're going to reconfigure that, because it's going to be twice as hard. And I don't know how far we are here in Adams or Berkshire County with having our seniors well. But that's a good question. And I guess in the COVID updates, thank you, Officer Blaisdell, for issuing that public health order on weddings, limiting their size. I think it's fully justified, given the amount of cases that we have here in Adams. And I should note that the order is on the town website. It's under COVID. Essentially limiting wedding parties to 75, whether indoors or outdoors. And there are a lot of, Officer Blaisdell put a lot of good information into that in terms of precautions, seating, masking, food, catering, and so forth. It's very clear and detailed, and thank you for spelling that out. It will remain in effect until the pandemic emergency ends, or Officer Blaisdell feels that Adams has achieved a safer state and will rescind the order. Any questions on that?
Has that been, Mark, has that been sent to the main venues?
I've only had discussion with one venue. It was my intention, yes, by the end of the week, to get it to other caterers.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Anything? Mount Royal Inn, Officer Blaisdell, and we had movement on Mount Royal Inn.
I have not had a conversation with the building commissioner. I did notice on his side of Permit Eyes that the establishment has provided the fire alarm inspection report. So I don't have anything further to report on that subject matter at the present time.
So you're basically saying it's now in the hands of the building commissioner?
Well, the problem is that the building commissioner has not issued a certificate of inspection for the establishment. I do not know if he's had improved communications with the owner. All I can say is that the establishment has provided their annual fire alarm inspection report to both the building commissioner, me, and to the fire chief.
Okay, let me, I'll leave this on the agenda for next month, and I will check with Commissioner Gardner myself just to understand fully. So thank you for helping us all through this.
So what's the next step with this then, Mark?
He doesn't know, I think, that's why.
Well, if there had been discussion after the last meeting that if Commissioner Gardner were to shut the establishment down, that then I would issue the similar order to coincide with his, and then notify the board within 2 days of me doing that, in accordance with statute, of course.
And that was if they did not communicate with Jerry, or
So
he did it
I
in
had
special-
offered to be the intermediary,
Yes.
since I, for 2 years running, have had good communications over there. Same thing with the fire chief. My offer was declined, so Deb is holding their lodging license through the Board of Selectmen in her office until she gets the CI from the building commissioner. I issued our permit, the Board of Health permit for their lodging, because I don't always get feedback from this other office, so I didn't wait. And then when I found out that he had not issued his CI, I made the notification to the proprietor as well as to the board.
Right, so I guess my next question is this hasn't been inspected, so we don't know if the building is safe, correct?
I have done my inspection, which is a safety inspection. So the inspection protocols for lodging are the same with housing code, except that that's done more in depth. And I asked for a copy of the annual fire alarm report. So I had that ahead of Commissioner Gardner. So we don't always do these inspections together.
So Chief Pansecchi has gone through the building?
Chief Pansecchi has, yes.
Okay. Okay, thanks, Mark.
All right.
Moving on.
So we're tabling this, or?
Yes, I'll talk with Commissioner Garner. And obviously, there's no more that Mark can do at this point. But I think in the interest of the establishment and everything else that anything we can do to facilitate. So I'll talk and we'll just bring it up next month. So thank you, Mark. Original C, let's see, Mr. John is on board here. And I'm not sure what we are doing at this point with original C, but thank you for coming. Was there an update, or I believe that our attorney, who's not with us anymore, had said that operating as you do does require a cigar lounge permit. And so that is an issue that I believe I think that's probably the biggest issue.
So I did my inspection on the March 18th, and they were allowed to open any point after that.
Open as what?
they could operate their retail establishment indoors, and our town reg allowed them to allow their patrons to smoke on premises. They also had previously obtained a food service permit, so someone could enjoy a cup of coffee and a cigar in the seated area.
Unfortunately, Mr. Attorney St. John is not here because I think the hoops for the cigar lounge permit are higher than just the town saying, okay, and the food, is it a victualler's license or is it an actual restaurant license?
No, so the common vic license is issued out of the Board of Selectmen.
Right.
Right, so they have a food service establishment permit. So you know, they could essentially serve a meal there if they prefer to. But that's not their business model. As far as the cigar bar, they have deviated from that standard or those protocols, and they are an adult retail establishment. And under our regulations, it does allow, or under the statute, it does allow for patrons to smoke their product on premises, so long as there's required signage and the required signage is there.
I mean, I think the distinction here is cigar lounge, which you were saying they are not, whatever you buy must be consumed on the premise.
And no. So don't pay attention to the title of the business name, as far as what activity is happening inside. So the classification that they are on is they're an adult establishment. They're allowed to sell, their product can be taken out. This is not a cigar bar. If it was a cigar bar, they would have to consume the product on premises. So someone can buy a package of cigars and take it out the door. Being an adult only retail shop, their patrons are also allowed to smoke the product on premises.
But are they allowed to have food?
And they have food.
Only.
They are allowed to have food. Their use of the food service permit would be primarily for a coffee beverage, non-alcoholic, of course. If they had some type of trade event, that those events would be catered.
Yeah, so I'm still feeling a little uncomfortable with the definition of the adult only was kind of vague to me. And with Attorney St. John not here, I would like to go back to him to get a better sense of what we're actually talking about.
So I emailed Attorney St. John when we were after the last meeting, when I didn't hear from him, and he responded that he advised the chair of the Board of Health that the 2020 regulations explicitly supersede and replace the 2014 regulations. And the 2014 regulations were what the issue was, stating that we could not smoke inside of a building. So he and I forwarded that to both Mark and Jerry, who both confirmed that we are operating legally.
Because what he wrote to me in an email was that you do need a cigar lounge permit. So I would have to go back.
We do not need a cigar lounge bar permit. There are two totally different permits. We are not a cigar bar. We are a cigar lounge. There's a difference. We have the correct permit. We have all the signages. We're following all the rules. We are not a cigar bar. We are not applying for a cigar bar permit.
Yeah, I think, David, in the Massachusetts, the general law, it does allow exceptions to smoke inside for the retail stores. It's right in the statutes, assuming they have the correct signage, which they do.
Okay.
The difference is it's the definition in the state statute, I think, is the title is different. It's a retail, I have it somewhere. Retail tobacco store versus our definition, which is the adult only retail tobacco store.
Right.
But it does explicitly say they're allowed to smoke inside in that circumstance.
Okay. So then all right, I will let this go. I'm having a hard time finding Attorney St. John's email, but yes, I will just confirm with him as he did with you, Tracy. So thank you for bearing with me. And I didn't find it. Nope, that was something else. Okay, so later. Thank you very much. Can we move on to the next issue, solid waste disposal? Mark has asked that we update our town bylaws.
So I haven't had any chance to do any more work on that. So if we could table that for next month, please.
I would be more than happy to do that. Now, there's got to be an official way of tabling something. Do we have to vote to table it, or do we just continue it? Okay.
I think whether it's
What's that?
tabled or continued is,
All right.
because if we vote to table it, then we have to vote to bring it off the table.
Okay.
Discuss it, right?
So let's just,
Or we just continue our discussion next
we will
week.
continue our discussion. Yes. May 12th. Okay. And okay, so that's it for old business. New business, I have here the 2022 budget. I did mention about the 2021 budget a little bit, and my understanding is that the budget going forward is we're basically level funded, which makes sense. It turns out as I said, there was a lot of expenses to the VNA, and we had several $1,000s in money for promotion, meetings, et cetera, which we didn't spend. And so we fortunately had a little cushion there, but Going forward, it's the same, and that's good. So thanks to everybody who was part of that. The other thing I had was cannabis home host community agreement. I have been trying unsuccessfully to find out the status of ours, and the reason I bring this up is that there's a community impact fee associated with marijuana establishments. I think we have one that's probably coming on board fairly soon, then LC Square, the grow facility. The community impact fee actually has some fairly strict parameters to it. It can't be more than 3%. It can't be for more than 5 years. And it has to be reasonably related to impacts on the community. And obviously, with marijuana, part of those impacts fall within the realm of public health. And so that was one of the reasons why I wanted to make sure we were at the table when the impact fees were discussed. Having said that, there are also accounting requirements and so forth. It's not like you can just sort of say, we'll take 3% and stick it in general budget. It's actually got to be in a separate pot in which you account. And there are other municipalities that are setting up a revolving fund or whatever that, because if you underspend in year one, you should by rights, reduce the amount of that fee going forward. And likewise, you can raise it if it seems like the fee is not covering justifiable costs, but you do need to track, and I just wanted to make sure that we were doing it appropriately. I mean, the biggest fear is that after some point, the marijuana establishment says, you've been overcharging me. You have no accounting for why you charged me at 3%, and they could ask for their money back. So I just wanted to make sure we did it by the book. So I am working on that. Hopefully I'll have more information by our next meeting. Any thoughts or questions? Okay. The local updates, the one I have, actually two. Last month we had a Public Health Alliance meeting. We talked a lot about the SAFE grant, the public health excellence. Mentioned a little bit more about that. But it turns out, we have not had an alternate. In fact, the main attendee to the Health Alliance for many years before I came on board was Skip Harrington. Even as a selectman, he was an alternate. We didn't have a regular. He was very loyal and faithful. May he rest in peace. But we needed an alternate, and I talked to Town Administrator Green and asked, I was just mentioning to Jay that we needed an alternate, and he said, he raised his hand and volunteered. He said, but you're not from Adams. And I said, I'll check on that. And so I was able that evening, learn that the alternate does not need to be from Adams. He only needs to be appointed by the Board of Selectmen, which is what they did on last Wednesday. So Jay Green is our alternate. So I'm happy. I feel like if I want to take a meeting off, I have a backup. So thank you, Jay. And today we had a little bit further discussion. I mentioned this, the SAFE grant. Got about 20 responses to needs. So one of the things, the SAFE grant is basically on, regional, developing regional resources. And the deadline for this was like April 1. I forget how big the pot was, but apparently there were like 30 applications made up, and I believe 4 of them were from Berkshire County. 2 of note is, well, I think Tri-Town sent in 1, and BRPC sent in 1 because there are fiduciary agent for public health, regional public health, for administrative assistance. The Public Health Alliance made an application for the full-time public health nurse who would actually do some wellness training across the county. The current Alliance nurse, Leslie Greger, she's actually only half-time. And so she's been taking care of a number of communities with the COVID. I think I read in the paper that she hasn't taken a day off since COVID started. She's amazing. But anyhow, we should find out soon. And it is a good program. It's still underfunded, but it basically is, how can we create regional public health initiatives, share resources that we can all do better together. I think that's it there. Upcoming, I don't have anything. In the mail, the one item that I saw of note, I didn't email you all the epidemiology report. Almost everything was COVID. There were 4 non-COVID cases, 3 of hepatitis C, 1 hepatitis B. When I talked to Nancy about this earlier, that those hepatitis cases may likely not even be new because they show up on Maven, because people with hepatitis often go back to the hospital time and again. Every time they go, they get a test, and it's positive, they get sent to Maven. And so a number of those might even be repeat, but the good news is no flu, absolutely no flu. So whatever we're doing for COVID, it's really stamped out the flu. So it just goes to show that proper hygiene in the wintertime. Any other mail that either of you saw that for the good of the order? Pete?
I just have that Monday, everybody's eligible to get the vaccine, so.
Yeah.
Get vaccinated, berkshires.org. Click on that and sign up, get registered, and get your shot.
Mine for the good of the order is actually for the bad of the order. I hate to see Laura leave us. We will sorely miss you, and definitely appreciate your helping us out for a couple of years. Thank you so much, and maybe we can tap you again in the future when
We can run
Yeah,
it.
perhaps if the veterinary world calms down a little bit. Thank you very much.
Yes, but, so yes, so thanks again, and,
Thanks, Laura.
Thanks, Pete.
I have next meeting scheduled for May 12, which is after the town election. And I would suggest that we do not try to schedule a meeting beyond that. Because who knows what's going to happen between now and then. So if you have any public health interested friends, have them write in with Board of Health. At this point, I think we need to go into executive session to approve minutes from the January 27th. May I have a motion to enter in executive session to approve the January 27th executive session minutes?
So moved.
Any further discussion?
No.
Pete?
Yes.
Laura?
Yes.
Dave? Yes, unanimous. We are in executive session. So if there's anybody else in the room with you, Laura, kick them out.
No one here.
Okay, thank you. So you all have the minutes. I did
So
say,
we still have people on.
do we?
Yeah.
Oh. Did not see those. Let me flip up here. Oh, yeah, okay. Yes, so I must ask Catherine Foster, Jack Marino, Mr. John, please leave the meeting.
Will we be able to come back at the end?
We will just adjourn after we close. Nothing else is happening. And Jack, that goes for you too, out. Thank you for the write-up on the Board of Selectmen. All right, there we go. I did not realize that that screen there wasn't complete. So, you've all seen the minutes?
I did not.
You sent them.
Have copies of the.
Yes.
Need lights? No.
Nope, we're good.
You sure?
Thank you.
You need some lights?
No. Copy here. You ready? Good, okay. So, either of you have any changes to the minutes as written?
I didn't see anything.
I have a motion to approve the minutes of the January 27th executive session.
So moved.
Second?
Any further discussion?
No.
I guess my only question is, do we have to have another executive session to approve this executive session? Don't go there. Pete.
Yes.
Laura.
Yes.
Dave, yes. Thank you. The minutes are approved as provided. May I have a motion to close the executive session?
So moved.
Second?
Any discussion? Pete,
Yes.
Laura,
Yes.
Dave, yes. So this executive session is now indeed closed. So let's let Laura make her last motion for adjournment.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Without any further discussion, Laura, what do you say?
Yes.
Last vote is yes. Pete?
Yes.
And Dave says yes. Thank you all, and have a good night. Hope to see you.
Yes, thank you.